And this is the central question. Everything else is secondary to this question, Dexter. I'm so glad you asked it. And we all know that for the oppressor, the best, most convenient slave is the one who believes he is not a slave, who allows himself, herself to be controlled at the body level as well as at the mind level. Because a free man or woman is not controlled at the body or the mind level. So do we break free? Um, Three groups of probably very well-intentioned doctors and scientists and people, various well-educated people, have contacted me and asked me to become part of the new WHO. Get out of WHO and we replace it. And we become the new WHO. And to each of these groups, I have repeatedly said, no. What you're doing is taking the old format and simply deciding that you can do it kinder and better and in a more gentle way. And then you become the new oligarchs and you decide who has to be suppressed and you decide what truth is. I said, as long as you're using the old format, you are accomplishing new, you're putting old wine in new bottles. And we know that this always results in a revolution becoming the oppressor, which then spawns the new revolution to become the new oppressor. I said, you have to change the mindset that allows you to think that you need this kind of control. We don't, as I say, need no stinking United Nations. We don't need no stinking WHO. And we don't need no stinking colonial government, whether or not the people are indigenous to the land. If the format, if the system, if the thinking, if the objectives of the new structure, the new government, is essentially the same as the old, what's the point? So if you invite me to speak to these revolutionaries, either by Zoom or, get me there, I'll go. We can talk about formatting a society based on, you should excuse the expression, I don't know, maybe justice, based on, I don't know, maybe love, I don't know, maybe fairness. We could try that, so that it isn't just a revolution so I get to be the head dude. Mm-hmm. That's going to get us exactly where we are now, which is nowhere. So if they are, and we need to, in fact, reinforce what is valuable in that society. I can't tell you what's valuable in your society, but I can tell you that if you're not reinforcing what's valuable in the society, if you're just aping the European, Western colonial imperialist model, why bother? Just, take a grant from some organization, put the money in a bank in Switzerland and go be rich. You're not doing anything. You're not accomplishing anything. And let's not fool ourselves. So people have to have a down and dirty conversation with themselves and with each other about what it means to be free and what it means to be colonized. It's not just having a foreign ruler. It's having a foreign concept of what freedom is that doesn't touch the essential nature of freedom. We all know what freedom is in our gut. We all know what freedom is when we broke away from the oligarchical control of our unreasonable parents, right? We know how to do that. We know what feels free and we know what doesn't feel free. And we know what guidance is as opposed to tyranny, right? This is part of being human too. So unless and until people are willing to have, take 3 days and just figure out what the hell you're doing with your new country, whether it's Niger or whether it's the United States or Canada or whatever. But tribal groups are saying, we are indigenous, we are sovereign. And what they're saying is we are colonized, but we want to be the ones who make the rules and get the profit from it. I'm sorry, that's not freedom. That's slavery. That's enslavement. It's like the abused child growing up to be the abusing parent. And the only way it stops is here, when you connect this and this. And that's not happening at the moment, I see. Now, if there is a country, but none of these countries that are standing up and saying we're free can do that unless they get out of the ultimate enslavement system, which is WHO, the United Nations, and the other subsidiary organizations that serve the United Nations. Because, in my view, there is a 4-step control system. The first control system that I call the Death Star coming over the horizon to kill us is WHO, with Agenda 2030 and One Health, and one forest, one tree, one water. It's all the same, total control and enslavement. Behind that sits the United Nations, which is like the Imperium in Star Wars, if you like. Behind that is the International Monetary System. And behind that is the unseen, speculated about control system that wants to tear apart the world, and they're using these 3 levels to do it. So we have to exit from the 2 that we have access to. One is WHO, and the second is the United Nations. Once that happens, and by the way, that takes us out of the international monetary system in a very interesting way. Once that happens, then we have the opportunity for freedom. And will it be a clear path? No, it's a bumpy road, because we have to experiment and do it differently in different parts of the world and so on. But unless and until each of these countries, Niger is a good a good example, unless it gets out of these organizations, instead of saying, oh, well, we're a real country, we're members of the international organizations, look at us, we're good. Unless they understand that, then they are already a failed revolution and marked for enslavement and death. And I mean, what does the rest of the world want with Africa? Not the Africans, it wants the resources. It's an incredibly rich mine of resources of every kind. Get rid of the Africans. That's been the colonial deal for a long time, right? It has to start with, what is colonialization? Let's make it right. Let's talk about real freedom. And that means getting rid of these monsters who actually want us all dead. Africans know better than a lot of other people that being dead is convenient for the rulers unless you're a worker. So I think that the potential is enormous, but only if these countries rise up and say, I'm out of here, to the UN and its subsidiary organizations. Otherwise, there's no point to everything they're doing, all the bloodshed, all the sweat and blood and tears. It's wasted.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Be in touch with them. I'll talk to them.
I think that's what we're going to do.
By the way, absolutely, please. The first country that leaves the United Nations and subsidiary organizations, I'm moving to. I will live there and I will give my heart's blood to, because it's the only free place on the planet.
I agree. So ultimately, I think this is, but I don't want to cut you off, Dexter. I think it's about freeing yourself of the mental colonization, of understanding that we, each and every one of us, regardless of country affiliation or national sovereignty, that we, each and every one of us, have their own sovereignty. Then we can connect, and that's what's going to make us really strong. We don't need any of these supranational structures. We don't need any structures whatsoever. We can structure ourselves, set up our own little communities, self-sufficient, independent of anyone. We need no one to tell us what to do and what not to do. That is, I think, the most important realization we have to come to.
Not only do we not need them, when they are present, we cannot be free. Mm-hmm. It's even more powerful than we don't need no stinking fill in the blank. Yeah. When we have the stinking fill in the blank, we have no freedom, because they are designed to remove our autonomy, our freedom, our individual and our national sovereignty. If you read the distressing and despicable document that the G20 world leaders, God help us all, that the G20 world leaders signed in Bali on November 21st, which is on the White House website, which is on the UK website. They're proud of it. They lay out every single possible method of removing human freedom and sovereignty from every single person on the planet. And what they said was bypassing the international health regulation amendments, which don't require national approval because the countries are already members of the World Health Organization's international health regulations. Bypassing these amendments, we will accomplish these things. And these things are a complete and total destruction of everything that every one of us holds dear, including our own sovereignty and autonomy. That's where we are. If we accede to their structure, we accede to their enslavement.
Dexter just participated in a meeting of lawyers from all across the continent, many of them young, if I remember correctly, Dexter. Do you think that you will find this kind of the willingness among the African people, the willingness to, or maybe they don't even have to understand it because they know it already. So it only requires to, only is a good word in this context, to free themselves of these mental shackles. Is there a realization that that's what it's all about? To realize that you, all of us, not just the Africans, but I think you're much further ahead than the rest of the pack, that we, all of us, have our own individual liberty, our own sovereignty. Is this a kind of realization that is there or that is about to be realized by the people?
I will say the